Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In this video, we are going to solve another psychology past paper. This is paper 2 from October-November 2022, and the paper's component is 2-2, and the paper is for 1 hour 30 minutes. The first question of the paper says the hypothesis for a study is adults with children vary more than adults without children. State whether this is a directional hypothesis or a non-directional hypothesis, and also include a reason for your answer. So let's read the hypothesis again. It says adults with children vary more than adults without children. So over here, this is a directional hypothesis because we are given the direction of the dependent variable, which is vary. So this is a directional hypothesis because it says the variable of varying is greater in one condition than the other. Now the next question says write a null hypothesis for this study. So a null hypothesis will be that there is going to be no difference between varying adults with and without children. Because in a null hypothesis, we need to tell that the independent variable is going to have no effect on the dependent variable. And question number 2 says from the study by Yamamoto et al., chimpanzee helping outline what is meant by reliability using the study as an example. So you need to tell what reliability refers to and how you can explain it through the study of Yamamoto et al. So reliability refers to consistency of a procedure or a task, or it can also be a measure or results. And over here you say that, for example, in Yamamoto et al., all the chimpanzees were pre-trained with the apparatus, so they would be equally good at the task. So they both were equally familiar with the apparatus, which will help them to be equally good at the task. So this is how the researcher tried to make the study consistent. And part B says suggest one way to improve reliability in this study. So it can be any general improvement. So let's say I write they could have used same chimpanzee, for example, same age or same level of experience, so that more of the things could be consistent in the study. Now question number 3 says in the study by Pepperberg Parrot Learning, quantitative data was collected from the questions about same and different. Outline what was observed to produce the quantitative data in this study. So we need to tell that which part of the study collected quantitative data, which part of the procedure. So over here the question already says that when the questions about same and different were asked. So from this we should have an idea that quantitative data was collected when the parrot was asked about the matter, color and shape of the objects. Part B says qualitative data can also be useful in a study. Pepperberg could have collected quantitative data by observing the parrot. Describe what is meant by qualitative data. So simply you can write that qualitative data is either in-depth data or detailed data or a descriptive data. And then part 2 says describe one behavior that could have been observed to produce qualitative data in this study. So you can write any observation that could have been done in the study by Pepperberg, like how the parrot could have been observed. So it could have been observed regarding its verbal behavior, or you can also write that what the parrot was doing when it was fidgeting. So any general observation like that will help you gain the mark. And then part 3 says explain why qualitative data for the behavior you identified in B2 would have been useful in this study. So let's say I'm going for verbal behavior. So why observing the verbal behavior would have been useful? Because observing the verbal behavior would have given insights into an avian thinking, like how an avian subjects think and how Alex understood the words he used. Question 4 is in the study by Dement and Kleitman, sleep and dreams, brain activity during sleep was recorded using an EEG. Another way to record brain activity is with fMRIs. Suggest 2 reasons why using an EEG to record brain activity during sleep is more appropriate choice than using an fMRI. So you simply need to state advantages of an EEG, but those should be compared with an fMRI. So let's say we can write that EEGs include only wires, whereas EEGs include only wires, whereas fMRIs include a whole big machine, which is not an appropriate way of making a participant sleep overnight. That is one advantage. Then you can write how an fMRI is more noisy as compared to an EEG. So a person might not be disturbed while sleeping with EEG wires attached. There can be second, and then being in fMRI machines can cause claustrophobia. So it might limit the variety of participants that can be selected in a study, because only the participants who do not go through or suffer from claustrophobia could have been selected for this study, and the rest would have been excluded. And then question 5 says, in the study by Andrade, doodling, a median could have been calculated for the results of the doodling group and the control group. Outline how a median could have been calculated for the number of names recalled by each group in the study. So you need to tell what happens, like how a median is collected, and then you need to tell that how could it have been collected in this study of Andrade. So what you simply needed to do in this was that put all the scores in a numerical order or a rank, and then a second mark will be given for and then find the middle score. This is the description of the median, and over here using all the name recall scores of either doodling or non-doodling group, and then compare them with each other. This is how medians could have been calculated in this study. Then question 6 says, describe the ethical guidelines of deception and confidentiality using any examples. So 3 marks per guideline. So like you are going to get 2 marks for describing what deception means, and then 1 mark will be for the example. So these are going to be 3 marks, and the rest 3 are for confidentiality, like 2 marks for what confidentiality refers to, and then 1 mark for providing any example of confidentiality. So over here we can write that deception is the okay, let's write it. Deception is misinforming participants about the aim or the procedure of the study, and participants should not be lied to, as this means they cannot give their informed consent and may want to withdraw later on. And then for this you can write an example, right? For example, in this study by Milgram, the participants were told that they were doing a study about memory, whereas in actual they were tested on obedience. So this is where deception occurred. And now for confidentiality. Confidentiality refers to ensuring that participants' information is anonymous and will not be made public. Participants should not be individually identifiable, and for example, in this study by Savitra and Silverman, the boy's name is not mentioned, even though a few details are mentioned, such as he was Hispanic, but still no one can identify the boy. Hence, this is the example where confidentiality was followed. And then section B, question 7 says, Shula is investigating whether there are differences in the way that younger and older people behave when they see each other. She is using observations to record the following behaviors: smiling, waving, and shouting. Explain whether Shula is conducting a structured observation or an unstructured observation. So we know that the behavioral categories are mentioned over here. So she is conducting a structured observation. So we are going to write that she is conducting a structured observation because she is using behavioral categories. There are 3 behaviors she has noted down: smiling, waving, and shouting. So 1 mark was for explanation and the other mark was for linking it to the study, linking it to Shula's study. And then part B says, explain why it would be better for Shula to conduct a covert observation than an overt observation. So again, what you need to do is you just need to write the advantages of covert observation and then compare it with overt observation. So let's say I write that the participants would be unaware of her presence and hence behave normally, so they would not alter their behaviors when they see others, because unlike overt observation, they would not be aware that someone is watching them. Part 2 says, suggest one problem with Shula conducting a covert observation. So just write any problem or disadvantage, limitation of a covert observation and link it to the study. So you can write that the participants would not know, or let's just start by explaining a problem that the participants would not be able to give their consent because, now link it to the study, because they would not know that their greetings or their greeting behavior was being observed. Question number 8 says Mahi is observing the effect of music on emotions. In part of her study, she is collecting data from 20 participants about their emotional responses to songs. She is using the following categories to observe emotional responses: angry, bored, happy, and relaxed. Suggest how Mahi could operationalize two of these categories of observed emotional behaviors. So you can write any two out of these four: angry, bored, happy, or relaxed. So let's say I'm writing bored, and for this she can operationalize by seeing if anyone is fidgety, or you can also write if anyone is doodling. And second one I'm taking is happy, which can be operationalized as if they are smiling. And then in part 2, what you have to do for one of your suggestions for the operationalization of category in part 8A1, explain why Mahi could misinterpret or incorrectly categorize an observed emotional response of a participant in her study. So you need to use the ones you have written over here. So out of bored and happy, let's say I'm using happy. You can write that for some people, smiling might just mean to be content and not that they are happy. So even if they are feeling content, Mahi would consider that as being happy. And then part B says Mahi is collecting data in the table below. This is the number of participants who showed each of the four emotional responses. She wants to display this on a bar chart. Label the axis for the bar chart that Mahi will use to display her results. So by now we know that the independent variable is always on the x-axis and the dependent variable is always on the y-axis. So over here, observed emotional responses will be on the x-axis and number of participants on y-axis. Its part C says in a second study, Mahi's participants will listen to different types of music. She expects that fast music will make the participants feel happy and slow music will make them feel unhappy. Explain one ethical problem with the design of this study, and you do not need to refer to deception or confidentiality in your answer. So you can write about psychological harm. How? Because failure to protect from psychological harm. Why? Because the people who hear a sad song might leave the study in a sad or depressive state of mind. And then suggest one way that Mahi could solve the ethical problem you explained in part 8C1. So what could have been done is that she should return the participants to a normal mood by playing them fast music at the end of the study, so that they can leave the study in an energetic mood. Question 9 says Sid is using an experiment to test whether epinephrine affects sleep. He has two groups. Two groups of participants. One group receives an epinephrine injection and the other group receives a saline injection, which means a placebo. And the participants do not know what their injection contains. Each participant is tested at a town center laboratory on a different night over a 20-night period. The town center is very busy at the weekend but quiet during the week. Now explain why it is important that participants do not know which condition they are in during an experiment. So basically deception. This is important so that they do not show demand characteristics, or else they might end up showing expected behavior which will impact the validity of the results. And then identify Sid's experimental design also included reason for your answer. And over here you can see for identifying Sid's experiment, going back to the prompt given, it says he has two groups of participants. One group receives an epinephrine injection and the other group receives a saline injection. So from over here we know that he used an independent measures design. And make sure you are not writing independent design or independent measures. You need to write the full word that it was an independent measures design. Why was it independent measures design? Because the epinephrine and the control group have different people in them. So we're telling it and linking it with the study by Sid. Different people are used in both of the studies, so this is an independent measures design. Now part C says suggest one participant variable that could affect Sid's experiment. So you can write about any. For example, I write people may have different sleep needs or sleep patterns, differences between groups may be due to participants normal sleep rather than epinephrine. So what the researcher might consider as an effect or side effect by epinephrine could have been a normal effect, because that is how a participant might normally sleep, but Sid could consider it as an effect or impact of epinephrine. Now part D says suggest one situational variable that could affect Sid's experiment. So situational variable, which is an extraneous variable, could be that people may be disturbed by the noise outside, hence differences between the groups may be caused by when in the week they were being tested, because the prompt that was given to us said that the place was busy, the town was busy during the weekdays but quiet on the weekends. So it might impact how a person sleeps. Now, in question number 10, it says Dr. Michel wants to investigate how physically active people are, and he believes that that this may be related to how much they use the social media. So, how physically active people are is your dependent variable, and how much they use social media is your independent variable. And describe how Dr. Michel could conduct a correlational study to investigate the relationship between how physically active people are and how much they use social media. Okay, so if the question says that it was a correlational study, then then this study does not have independent or dependent variable. In fact, these two will become your two measured variable. So first variable is going to be how physically active people are, and second variable is going to be how much they use the social media. And in a correlational study, we do not use the words independent or dependent variable. Now, before starting the study, there are a few questions that we need to keep in mind while attempting the designer study question, which is what, why, how, who, where, and when. So what is our correlational study? Why is because Dr. Michel wants to investigate the relationship between how physically active people are and how much they use social media. How is going to be our whole procedure, who is going to be our sample, where the study is taking place, and when is like around how much time the study would take. So I'm just going to write a few points, and for this you are going to write a full paragraph, but I'm just going to write a few pointers that Dr. Michel could conduct a correlational study to where you can also write correlational study where his two measured variables are how physically active people are and how much they use social media. And then for this, you are going to write the whole procedure, and before the procedure, you also need to write about the sample. So let's say you can write Dr. Michel could conduct his or could recruit his sample through opportunity sampling. Anyone who happens to be in the park could be his sample, and there are going to be people of different ages, because obviously in a park a child is also going to be there and adults are also going to be there. And then for the how part, you can write that Dr. Michel could ask a few objective short questions from the participants. For example, how much often do you exercise in a week? And then how much hours do you spend on social media in a day? And then you can write about the data analysis. That is also the part of the procedure that Dr. Michel could compare the hours a person spends on social media. 2, how much often they exercise. Study would take place in the park and it would take around 1 hour at maximum. Now, as part B says, identify one practical weakness or limitation with the procedure you have described in your answer and suggest how your study might be done differently to overcome the problem, and you do not have to refer to ethics or sampling. So referring back to the whole procedure, we can write that as Dr. Michelle is asking the questions to the participants themselves. It is possible that they lie about how often they exercise due to the social desirability effect. And then to overcome this limitation, Dr. Michelle could observe the participants over 2 to 3 days to see how often do they indulge in exercise. And then ask them about the hours they spent on social media. So this is how you can write the second part of this answer.